and Public Health, Exploring Research Perspectives. And on behalf of Parul Institute of Physiotherapy, I would like to welcome Mr. Kandap Talati, who is a member of Core Research Committee, mentor of interdisciplinary and action research at Center of Research for Development, Parul University. Sir is having a vast experience in carrying out community research and conceptualization, protocol development, grant writing to research projects and implementation, supervision, monitoring, scientific report writing, and dissemination of study findings. So without any further ado, I would like to request Mr. Kandap Talati to start the webinar. Welcome, sir.
Sure. Thank you, madam. And good morning, all. So as known to all of you, our topic for today is physiotherapy and public health, exploring research perspectives. So key objective for today's session would be understanding the interdisciplinary relationship between physiotherapy and public health, and with emphasis on physical activity per se, and exploring potential opportunities for action research at the intersection of physiotherapy and public health. So the session outline is in the first part we will cover the what is public health, physiotherapy, and what is the interdisciplinary opportunities between physiotherapy and public health from the perspective of research, and then what are the opportunities in terms of what are the existing research gaps, what the review of literature suggests, and how we can go forward with the strategies where we can take up some of these ideas towards an actual research as a part of PG dissertation or PhD or even undergraduate clinical postings. So understanding public health, this is a crisp and concise video. I will play that out and I'm sure it will give a broader overview of what public health is.
Okay, so physically, where are these exposures and outcomes? And of course, we mean distribution sociologically across the different systems.
Uh, so this briefly describes what public health is. Now, one of the things he mentioned in this video is public health is at the level of community, country, or a global health. But thanks to the advancements in the information and computer sciences, as well as artificial intelligence, machine learning, data sciences, we are now able to realize the dream of individualized public health. So, for an example of obesity, and we want an physiotherapy intervention to keep weight under the control and thereby reducing the risk of cardiovascular diseases at a middle age or at a elderly age. We cannot just go with a simple exercise plan or a diet plan for everyone. That plan has to be individualized for an individual based on his practices with regards to diet, physical activity, his job or occupation, his family environment, his economic status, and number of other factors. So now we have been able to do it at an individual level as well as for communities. So far, how it was working is we have a guidance or the recommendations coming from the agencies like World Health Organization or Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Government of India. The policy comes to different states, they translate the policies and that percolates to the ground level. And over the period of time, it does not make any impact. For example, say Integrated Child Development Services, which was started in 1975. It is one of the world's largest outreach program to reduce the risk of malnutrition. But malnutrition still stands to be an important public health challenge. Even in a city like Vadodara, about 50% adults are anemic. Now we don't look at this risk because whenever the term like public health comes or the community health comes, what we try to look at is a urban slum or a remote villages and kind of things, and we don't consider population in general, the population that lives in the urban cities, the population which is middle class or upper class, the population which is within the university, that is also a community, the students, the faculty, the support staff with regards to administrators, technicians, housekeeping staff, all those comprises a community within the university campus. So even that could be one of the communities because it's within the particular geography. So with regard to computer sciences and the artificial intelligence or machine learning, we can have very individualized health promotion messages or physical activity plans for an individual. keeping in mind his behaviors, his barriers, and helping him to actually follow the plans, not just prescribing them to remain on paper forever. Now going to the next part, it's a social determinants of health. So our health is being influenced by everything under the sky. And we will try to understand this with again in one another video. Sorry. So here the video was trying to explain how the individual socioeconomic status is being influenced by the government, governance, politics, and the policy decision making. So as far India is concerned, we have most of the health policies being designed by government of India, keeping in mind the various surveys that are being conducted from time to time, including the National Family Health Survey, which is a district level survey being conducted every 3 years. But again, there exists some gaps. Like the last survey, last to last survey was conducted in 2005-6, And after 10 years, another survey got conducted in 2015-16. We are fortunate enough that the very recently government concluded the fifth NFHS, which was in 2018 and 19. But again, because of the COVID-19 crisis, we don't have the data published so far. So these are the some building blocks on which government determines like how to frame the policies. Now these policies are very open when government designs this. What government asks is even a local officer at the tehsil level or the taluka level is empowered to take his own decision. uh, he can make some changes. He has some resources to address the health problem existing in his own catchment area within the tehsil or within the community health center or within the primary health center. But to avoid accountability, seldom these people exercise their right to make health a local issue. What they keep doing is they just take insights from the national health policy or from the state level policy and implement it in their local area. And they just implement it during the training or orientation session. And because they don't address the local issues, they just keep addressing the issues in local. As a result, even after 70 years of independence, malnutrition still remains the number one public health challenge. And as a result of malnutrition, there are a lot of other diseases which individual is at risk of if he is born underweight or he is not having an optimal body weight kind of things. Moving forward, understanding physiotherapy. Now I am sure all of you come from a background, or most of you come from a background in the physiotherapy, and you must be thinking in your mind that keep calm because I know it all. So I will skip this section and will leave it on you because you understand it better than me. Now coming to the interdisciplinary relationship. I'm not deep diving into physiotherapy as such, but just take a very simple example of physical activity, which is a very foundation of physiotherapy. And it has various applications, not just in the disease prevention and health promotion, but also to manage various disease conditions or even the post surgical procedures and kind of things. And degree of interdisciplinarity will only increase if we deep dive into what physiotherapy actually has to offer. So physical activity considers a very basic example, and there are a number of benefits which have been reported in the literature, and we will try to see a few of them today as I take you through the journey of the review of literature. As you can read in the image, some of these benefits are the physical activity helps maintain a healthy body weight, lowers blood pressure, decreases the risk of heart disease, lowers the risk of type 2 diabetes, reduces the risk of certain cancers, including breast cancer and colon cancer, increases muscle strength and function, improves bone health and strength, helps to promote positive mental health, and reduces the risk of dementia. Now, many of us know these benefits of physical activity. Even we know the recommendation that we should be doing more than 150 minutes of physical activity in a week. But how many of us are actually able to do a moderate to rigorous physical activity as may be suggested by various health agencies based on a research? So what is that factor that despite we have the knowledge, we are not able to translate that knowledge into the practice? Because if we do a recommended physical activity on a regular basis, in a long term, it will help us prevent from the cardiovascular diseases, including hypertension, diabetes, higher lipid levels. And as here it is written, dementia, cancer, and other cognitive and physical morbidities. So that is something which is of interest when we talk about the research. What are the barriers to actually pursuing what is recommended? And we don't have to go very far for this. Like we are living in a society where we might know a friend or a family, maybe our own family or someone in the neighborhood or someone in our relatives or distant relatives who might be suffering from diabetes, hypertension, and still we see like they have a sedentary lifestyle. They are not able to put enough efforts to do the physical activity which has been recommended to them many a times. Maybe you might be recommending this to someone as a physiotherapist or as a physiotherapy students, and still you see they are not able to do it. So research is not just about which physiotherapy intervention would work and which would not work. in terms of randomized trials or something, but it is also about what are the barriers at the level of behavior change when person is not able to do or practice the physical activity which he knows can help him achieve a better health or manage a better health condition. So this is something which could be pursued at the interdisciplinary research between physiotherapy and public health. Now let us see the percentage change in prevalence of leading non-communicable diseases in India between 1990 to 2016, say like 25 years. You can see number of conditions where physical activity or a physiotherapy could have a direct implications in terms of not just preventing the disease, but even if someone acquires the disease, physiotherapy has a role in better management of his disease conditions. So say a very simple example of diabetes or a low back and neck pain. If person is taking medications, but along with that, if he maintains certain diet as well as physical activity, he can maintain his blood sugar level in a very good way rather than just being put alone on the medications. So number of conditions include low back and neck pain, which is a very common problem today because of the increasing use of computers, sedentary lifestyle and whatnot. Even migraine and physiotherapy or physical activity could be explored in detail. We do have some evidence about that as well. Musculoskeletal conditions, definitely. Depressive disorders and anxiety disorders, even mental health and cognitive function and the physiotherapy has been well explored in the literature. So we can do it among different communities, be student communities who might face depression because of their study burden or the exam, pre-exam kind of things. Even in the pregnant women who are usually prone to this postnatal depression, in elderly people who might be facing depression because of the isolation and kind of things or cognitive inability. So, and if you look at the burden, the cerebrovascular disease, like 53% increase in 25 years, diabetes 64% increase, depression and anxiety together almost 18% increase. So disease is increasing as per the increase in the population, and we don't have enough hospital beds, we don't have enough doctors to take care of. So prevention is the way forward, and that is where government of India also come up with a concept called a wellness. So the sub centers have been renamed as the health and wellness centers now. So prevention is being emphasized. We have Ayush medical doctors or nurses being manned at that such wellness centers. Uh, which of these non-communicable diseases can be prevented with physical activity is kind of a thought, and which NCDs could be better managed is something we can look into, and we can take up a research for our local communities, age specific, younger population, middle age population, elderly population. Though the evidence is established, does not mean we cannot take up this research because we don't know what is working and what is not working in our local population. Even there could be a couple of studies where we can say, okay, medications plus certain physiotherapy interventions, say intervention A, medication plus intervention A plus intervention B, and we can see which one is better working in a better management of the disease profile and among what individual, because individual socio-demographic profile matters a lot. Who is our population, what is their socio-economic conditions, and in which conditions our intervention is doing well. So some intervention which may work well with the students might not work well with the parents of the same students, or similarly with the students in the single college or the another college, given their different academic loads, say engineering and the medical students. So these are also the areas which needs to be explored, and that allows a very good opportunity as an interdisciplinary research, because as a physiotherapist or as a physiotherapy researcher, your focus would be which interventions are working. You might not be interested in knowing among whom it is working or it is not working. So epidemiology is something that public health people would be interested into. So I have one another video. Let us see if we can have a good voice, or maybe we can skip this video. Let's take a try and let me have a feedback on that. So this video says like poor diet, alcohol consumption, and lack of physical activity are the three most common reasons for the rise of non-communicable diseases, not in just in countries like India, but also in the Western world. So this better approach is something being conceptualized in Canada with University of Toronto and couple of other universities. And what they are looking forward to is if an individual is acquiring a disease, it will be very difficult to manage in terms of financial resources or the constraint on not only on the health systems, but also on the individual families. So they are looking forward to the preventive approach. Now, how to prevent the disorder? Because we don't have enough doctors. Even in countries like Canada, UK, USA, it takes a lot of time if you go for an appointment with a doctor. So they are advocating a preventive approach with an interdisciplinary team. This team comprises doctors, nurses, community nurses, physiotherapists, pharmacists, and so on. So these people could help individual follow certain diet, have a certain lifestyle, follow some physical activities, and there will be a regular monitoring of his health. So if we found any risk factor, say obesity, his prescription would change. The level of physical activity he may require, the changes in the diet he may require would be suggested him based on a regular monitoring of his health indicators or his personal health, individual health. And that is the approach they say. It's a better approach, and one can may browse it on the website and as well as on the YouTube. So now research gaps, some of which I already mentioned. So we have the health and wellness clinic or the centers under the Ayushman Bharat. One thing of interest would be to see what is the role of physiotherapist. May not be from the core perspective of a physiotherapy as a clinical discipline, but from a perspective of a health management research or a health systems research, and to what extent that role has been justified. So if we say physiotherapist could have a great role to play, just like the someone who knows yoga or someone who knows Ayurveda or someone who knows nursing, then to what extent physiotherapists are being employed to deliver the services? So it's an health management research subject. Are they adequately appointed or do they have an actual role to play into it? We need to understand that. Role of physiotherapist as a standalone practitioner or in an interdisciplinary team for the disease prevention and health promotion at primary health center level or at the community health center level, or even an individual instructor, maybe in some health centers or gymnasiums kind of things. In the society, how physiotherapists can play an active role in disease prevention and health promotion, or even in the same medical colleges for that purpose, or the hospitals for that purpose. Community health initiatives. What we need in terms of the research going forward from here, epidemiological and interventional studies in collaboration with the physiotherapy, say for campus community, different staffs, housekeeping, faculty, students, what is their disease burden, what is their socio-demographic profile, and where a physiotherapy could have a role to play among those individuals. Similarly, for school community, elderly community, like people who are staying alone, people who are staying with spouse, just husband and wife together, or maybe with people who are staying with family. So if we have, suppose we are looking at a diabetes in an elderly community, we have a physiotherapy recommendation for these people. People who are living in different conditions, like someone who is staying alone, someone in maybe in elderly homes, Vruddhashram, what we say, or someone husband and wife together, or someone husband, wife, and extended family, their children or grandchildren kind of things. Are our prescription working equally among this population? And what is the result of this physiotherapy intervention on their actual disease control? Say, if for an example of diabetes, what is that HbA1c level control over a period of 3 months, over a period of 6 months? what is their fasting and then postprandial blood sugar control, say after a period of 1 month, 2 month, 3 month kind of things. Because we might have a prescription based on an individual taking into account his mobility and kind of things, but motivation is something we hardly study as a component of our research. Also, when we are prescribing something with some equipment now, because we have the digital equipments available, lot of these CureFit and kind of websites are offering online sessions even for the fitness sessions and kind of things. Yoga sessions are happening online at the charges. To how many people that is affordable, and what is the someone going to the gymnasium or someone attending an online session, what is the adherence to the physical activity, and what is the impact of such interventions on their actual health? So this is something which needs to be studied. And thanks to COVID, we are in the time which is unprecedented in the human history. So it allows a lot of research studies to see how people are getting accustomed to the work from home conditions or a lockdown conditions kind of thing. One of the research which came from the Western countries suggests that their dietary control is not so well amid the lockdown. People are eating fast foods and junk foods, and they are storing it for a longer periods and kind of things, not having access to the fresh foods and kind of things in the Western countries. What is our experience in Indian context? Because if you say my personal experience, I think we have been pretty much doing a good with the diets, fresh foods, freshly cooked, no food from outside, because we don't know what they use, what they don't use in terms of pesticides, chemicals, preservatives, and whatnot. So are we having the same experience? And among different people, this might be changing, because people who are staying alone, who are staying in hostels, and even under lockdown, who could not get back to their homes, they might have a different experience from the experience what I have. And how all these things are impacting their health. Like someone who is regularly going to the gymnasium, now the gyms were closed for during the lockdown period, they just opened recently on the 5th of August. How they manage their health, how they manage their fitness levels being locked down. So this is something which could be an exciting topics as we go forward, and a very fresh topics. And I'm sure many people around the world are doing research on the similar topics. So now we will take some review of literature and how they are trying to point. And when you do a review of literature, it's not just about the methods and the results that encourages it, but it is something to look into the limitations of the study, or what is their future recommendation, because that could be a future topic for our research as well. So we might carry out the same study as they might have been carried out, but we can take what they might have missed out as per the limitations stated, or as per their recommendation for a future research. So this study is a systematic review of the association between physical activity and burnout. Now, burnout is both mental and physical exhaustion. Maybe at the because of your academics or work at the workplace, or even at the home. There were a lot of reports of people getting burned out in staying longer periods with the family. So that is also something interesting. And we know our media reports everything with a hype. So we don't know actually what was the proportion of such burnout during the lockdown as people stay with families for longer period. But that's interesting. So this systematic review is all about the longitudinal and interventional studies to see the relationship between physical activity and the burnout. And the study found that there was a strong evidence for the effect of physical activity on reducing exhaustion in interventional studies. But the key limitation was they reviewed some 10 studies for this systematic review, and they found only one study which they could define as a high quality study as per the checklist. So what we can take home here from this study is, when we do research, say for the physical activity and burnout, we have to make sure our research methodology is scientifically rigorous. Our implementation or execution of research with regards to participant follow-up, questionnaires, and survey data collection, data audits, and monitoring is also as rigorously possible as much as possible. So The study concludes that there is a lack of high quality longitudinal and interventional studies. My personal interest and my personal background is also in the longitudinal and interventional studies. I have been a co-investigator of 7 of the Indian Council of Medical Research grants. Most of them were the longitudinal and interventional studies. We severely lack interventional studies, and hardly someone looks at the sustainability of those interventions. Suppose we are doing a study for a 1 month and we say, okay, it has improved. But when the participant is not enrolled to the study after a period of 1 month and he's still facing the same condition, what are the chances that he will go home and he will continue with the exercises that we make him do during his study period? So sustainability, post-intervention sustainability is something that the funding agencies wants to look into. And those are the proposals which get funded by the agencies. So future research should be conducted with the aim to produce high quality studies and to develop a full picture of physical activity as a strategy to reduce burnout. And here you can replace burnout with any possible condition that you can think in your mind where physiotherapy could have an application. Now, review of 10 studies. Does it sound like simple? You can just take 10 full papers, review, and come up to a conclusion. It takes effort. Any research, even if it is a PG dissertation, PhD, or even an undergraduate research or a funded grant, it takes lot of efforts, because without those efforts, you cannot achieve the degree of scientific rigor in any research. Right from developing a protocol, review of literature, planning your methodology, data keeping, data collection, data audits, plan of analysis, writing the results, writing your dissertation report or a manuscript, and the final publication. It all takes 100% commitment, 100% dedication, and many a times beyond the office hours commitment. So as you can see through this flow diagram, they identified around 4,600 studies. After removing the duplicates, they still have more than 2,000 studies. And they screened these studies and they found 172 studies eligible for the analysis. And among these, they actually read full text articles, 170 full text articles, of which they selected 10. And then they analyzed their systematic review based on these 10 studies, 4 of which were longitudinal, maybe simple cohort studies without any interventions, just to see what is happening among the population with regards to specific disease. And 6 were the interventional studies. And still they say out of these 10, just 1 was a high quality study. And when systematic review happens, they take best of the published literatures, not just any published literature that gets published in any journal that randomly pops up in the Google Scholar. So, but even among those impact factor journals, they just find one single study which they could define as an high impact study. So you can understand where we lack, not just in a locally but globally, in terms of producing good scientific evidence. This is another study about physical activity and digital interventions. So I'm sure many of you might be using the wristbands or the smart watches and kind of things, and regularly tracking your steps, your heart points, and not whatnot. And that opens up a new avenue for research. So this is a systematic review of digital interventions for improving the diet and physical activity behaviors of adolescents. So they say that digital platforms offer inexpensive means of delivering health interventions. And the systematic review was conducted to synthesize evidence on the effective intervention component. So when you are delivering something through the digital platform, what could be the effective intervention component? Because if the intervention is delivered online or through a website or a mobile app or through a gaming application, the user engagement will differ from platform to platform. And even if you say like you have 3 websites or 5 websites, the user engagement will vary based on their user graphic interface. It will vary based on their content, and the level of content as well. So it is just like watching some series on Amazon Prime or Netflix. You don't like to watch all the series, web series that pops up. You have your specific interest, and that interest may again vary from individual to individual. So this is as complex as what is the decision or a decision making process that runs on your mind when you say, okay, I want to watch this web series or this original series kind of things. So they analyze the data to identify key features, studying some 32 articles representing 27 studies, research, and most of them were website interventions. Few others were included text messages, games, multi-component interventions. Multi-component interventions used both digital and non-digital platforms, and including parental involvement, emails and social media. They find key components which influence the significant behavior change were education, goal setting, self-monitoring, and parental involvement. And none of the publications reported cost effectiveness. What does it mean for us when we are reading through such a literature? We should also try to study the cost effectiveness. So if we are studying intervention A versus intervention B or intervention A versus B versus C, we should try to see what is the monthly cost in terms of hardware or software or subscription fees, and does it has impact on the engagement. Are people leaving it after a couple of months or few months once their health goals are achieved? And even after that period, whether they are able to sustain their health or physical strength, or it is deteriorating over a period of time because they have not unsubscribed to the program and kind of things. And they suggest, because most of the interventions were based on websites, they suggest further research into alternate media, and longer term outcomes should be evaluated. So it's not just about being subscribing to some program for a month and then giving it up. And it is good if we, even if we give up and we could maintain our physical health. But if our physical health is deteriorating, because I know a lot of people personally who went to some diet plan, they reduced their weight a lot, and once they stopped that, their weight just shoot up more than what it was actually. So what's going wrong with that kind of programs? And similarly with the physical activity. And as it is earlier reported, there is a paucity of data on the cost effectiveness of digital health interventions, and future trials should report this data. So again, this study also, to get some 32 papers, they screened some 6,800 studies. They reviewed their title and abstract and screened out 81 studies. And I'm sure they might have read these all 81 studies and included 32 papers representing some 26 studies. So we were talking about digital interventions, and I was just going through my LinkedIn profile this morning, and I find out someone in the University of Texas, the School of Health Sciences, has a PhD student who has just started testing how the Samsung smartwatches can reduce real-time police officer stress. So this falls under the occupational health. So occupational health and the physiotherapy is again the area where you can take a specific occupation and then see like how physical physiotherapy could help prevent certain diseases or manage certain diseases kind of things. So some of the research which could be very much done within the university campus, even among the students who are staying on campus or off the campus, like smartwatches or the wristbands and the walking behaviors, heart points and stress, their physical fitness, with a guided interventions. So we could have a weekly or fortnightly meeting with the students, and we give them the individualized plans, and then monitor through their data collected through their wristbands or smartwatches on their physical activity status. So lot of opportunity even in that space. A lot of youth today, even adolescents, are self-conscious about their body image or body shape. In between, we have this zero figure trend and the six packs among male and kind of thing. So all celebrity also influences a lot of physical health or the body image consciousness kind of things. And physical activity could have a role there as well, like whether you are doing physical activity just because you want to remain in a good health, or your physical activity is influenced by your shame or your guilt about your body shape. If you are feeling too obese or you are feeling too lean, and out of that shame or what the society would say, or whether I would get a good life partner or not, and kind of things, or would people troll me when I post my pictures on the social media, kind of things. Are we doing something which I'm not inclined to, but I'm doing under a social pressure or a peer pressure? That could be the thing to be studied. And this is an interdisciplinarity between the behavioral health scientist coming from a public health background, or actually a psychiatrist or a psychologist. And we are fortunate enough because we are sitting in the Parole University, and we have a psychologist, we have a psychiatrist, we have a public health school, even we have a mental health in nursing as well as a mental health in social work curriculum. So a student from physiotherapy, PG student from physiotherapy, and a PG student from social work could take the same study with the same protocol, and yet their dissertation could be on different objectives. The physiotherapy student might focus on his objective, and the student working on the mental health side of it could focus on his side of objective. So that are the interdisciplinary opportunities, even with the student level research, not just the funded research. So the purpose of this study was to test a model where body image or body shape related self-conscious emotions of shame, guilt, and pride, and their association with physical activity regulations, how regularly you do the physical activity, and behavior. What is your behavior behind doing those physical activities? And they find out body related pride. Like if you feel, okay, I am good, my body shape is perfect, doesn't matter, it has to be 6 abs, as long as you are good with your mind and you are able to convince yourself, okay, I am in a good shape, that was positively significantly related to identified and intrinsic regulations. So that is something driven by your intrinsic self, your own self. Whereas the body related guilt and shame were positively related to external and introjected regulation. Introjected regulation is driven by the thinking about the society, thinking about the external, thinking about other people and their perception about your body shape, and where you start doing something out of that fear rather than actual requirement. So identified an intrinsic regulation, as well as it is coming from your inner self, your own self, that was positively related to physical activity. So indirectly, what is mean? External and introjected regulation may not be positively related to physical activity. So you are doing something, but you actually don't know what could be its benefit on physical health or a fitness per se. And this is something which could be done with the students on the campus, because we also have a gymnasiums, and whether they are subscribing to gymnasium out of this fear, or they actually want to keep their health into the fit mode and kind of things. And these findings highlight the importance of targeting and understanding the realm of body image related self-conscious emotions and the associated links to regulations and physical activity behavior. So what could be the effect on weight loss with a celebrity endorsement? We have a lot of celebrity coming to Parole University for various talks and kind of things. Uh, there is a study published titled An 8-Week Web-Based Weight Loss Challenge with Celebrity Endorsement and Enhanced Social Support. It was an observational study. So Shannon Ponton is an Australian and is a celebrity personal trainer on the biggest loser. This is the program for a weight loss in Australia, pretty popular program. And he made his first appearance during the show's second season in 2007. Now, what this study is reporting, they divided the people in two groups. One was, both were the interventions. One was the Biggest Loser Club, and another was the Biggest Loser Club's Shannon Ponton Fast Track Challenge. So the group BLC and the group SC, and they measured the weight loss at the baseline and at the end of 8 weeks, that is 2 months. So what the BLC component was, the BLC program has a standard evidence-based website features, And that also has the individualized calorie and exercise targets. And the target was 0.5 to 1 kg per week weight loss. Whereas the fast track challenge had the same features as the BLC, but in addition, it also has a greater initial weight loss target with a plan to have energy intake and energy expenditure defined. And it also used features to facilitate greater user engagement. So I also talked about the user engagement is very important when you, not just on the digital interventions, but also in the interventions that we run through physical settings like gymnasiums. And also offer additional opportunities for social support, like webinar meetings with a celebrity personal trainer and a social networking, peer networking opportunities. And at the 8 week, they found the fast track challenge program, the people lost almost 5.1 kilogram at the end of 8 weeks on average, compared to 4.5 kg, that is like 600 grams more weight loss in a program that included a celebrity personal trainer. The fast track challenge participant assessed the discussion forums, menu plans, exercise plans, and educational materials significantly more than the BLC participants. So this is something which explains the user engagement. And we don't know whether it was just a celebrity personal trainer that influenced this, or there was other pervasive features like peer support and kind of things also worked in favor of fast track challenge participants. So something you can do on the Parul University campus is next time some celebrities visiting, you can endorse them for a physiotherapy or physical activity plan and see whether there is a change in behavior of the students on the campus or in particular colleges with regards to their health consciousness or not, or even physical activity consciousness. Now, I just touch upon some of the topics. Physiotherapy and public health both are pretty vast disciplines, and we can talk about n number of research. And maybe the next webinar could be on a very specific or a limited disease and the role of physiotherapy into it. And maybe just a 1 or 2 applications or interventions related to physiotherapy. But overall, when we talk about the research or the interdisciplinary research, say, how we can go about it. So far, so good. As per the one estimate some 5 years ago, 95% of the studies in Indian setting were cross-sectional in nature. Even the interventional studies or the control trials were not of the rigor where you can count them as trials, because the control was lacking or the intervention was not greatly defined, or the confounders or the other factors which also influence the health outcome were not properly studied in those papers. So now government, as far as funding decision goes, is focusing on evidence informed program. So when you are prescribing something to someone, what all factors you studied, you kept in mind and come up with an intervention that you are proposing. What is your evidence for a particular intervention? And I'm not talking about the clinical evidence per se, because everyone knows what is the clinical evidence. We study that very well in our academics. It is well documented in our textbooks. It is well documented and frequently published on the journals. I'm talking about epidemiological evidence, behavioral evidence, individual level evidence. Funding agencies are focusing on implementation research, but where is the local evidence? And if there is no evidence, who is going to pilot? Most of the grant that comes today, there is a very specific condition that if you have pilot tested, government will fund it for a validation or a scale up the intervention to have a additional or a reliable, say, a degree of statistical analysis. But if you have not piloted, the chances of getting grant exist only if your idea is based on some really fascinating theoretical underpinning, which is very recent in terms of publication or in terms of its application. Otherwise, everyone knows what is happening around the world and why it should be funded. So Narendra Modi in the 2018 Indian Science Congress, when he gave a plenary speech, there were some quotes which I personally liked, and I'm taking it here. What the government mean by research? So they said research for development. which could help in the societal development, community development, or academic development, scientific development, not just research per se for the matter of publication or presentation in the conference. Science, including the science of physiotherapy or public health or any other science for that matter, should help to solve the socio-economic problems of common people. If you go to a good doctor after having diabetes or say abnormal blood sugar values, a good clinical practitioner would first try with a diet and physical activity recommendations for a 3 to 6 months period with regular blood sugar monitoring, maybe on a daily basis or a weekly basis based on your blood sugar level. But in what cases we have been able to manage diabetes for so long without a medication with just diet and physical activity? There is no absolute evidence. And to what, with what rigor people are actually doing? Because maybe there is not enough counseling to make people understand it's not just about the medication, the future complications that might arise out of these diseases. They also pitched about far greater penetration of services, including healthcare. And I think physiotherapy falls very much under the broader domain of healthcare. And we have to throw open our institutions and laboratories to our children. So if someone is an undergraduate student, does not mean that they cannot pursue the research. The only thing is their curriculum might not want it. So whatever they have to do beyond their college hours. It is just like spending a time for a leisure activity or a movie and kind of things. You can consider doing research in those times, because I don't see research as a kind of an academic pursuit, but it is something that you see in your family and you try to solve it. If you are able to solve it, even you can publish your experience with one single individual as a case study, because you somewhere you help an individual to have his health in his own control and extend research from labs to land. So we know a lot from our textbooks, but does it actually apply when we want to prescribe someone in our vicinity, in our neighborhood, in our family, in our friend circles? These are some of the points to ponder when we think about research. How we can take up within an academic institution? We need to have an institutional research group, identify long-term research priorities, both from an disciplinary perspective like physiotherapy as well as interdisciplinary, and implementation science perspective, because that is what is going to be funded. Now, breaking these identified research themes or the research priorities into the specific objectives, including some of the objectives we can even study within our settings without any funding as a part of PG dissertation or PhD thesis and kind of thing, or even during the data collection during the UG's clinical postings. Starting with PG thesis, intramural funding if the institution offers, and local support organizations, like if you want to do something for the occupational health, can we collaborate with the industry which is just besides like any GIDC or bigger industries around? Exploring collaborations and signing MOUs, beginning with the campus institutions. So publishing research into renowned journals. Now, if you want to publish into a renowned journals, what you need is starting with a very rigorous process of identifying the project, ideation, conceptualization, and then the rigorous protocol writing. Most of the time, my experience with the student-led research or even faculty-led research is, we think protocol is secondary. It's not required to be as rigorous as possible. We don't do review of literature very strong at that level. My personal experience or my personal outlook to research is, I try to do best of the review of literature at the time of proposal writing, before writing the proposal, because that when you are studying a lot of literature, it helps you design, okay, what are the limitations in other studies which I can take as my objective, my research objectives. And when I go forward with those objectives, I have a higher chances of publishing in those journals. And keeping long-term interest alive towards collaborative grant writing and submission. So maybe a one PG student finishes his research. Maybe we can engage another student next year, the third student year after, and look forward to achieve all our objectives. And if we are publishing in good journals, we can actually apply to the research agencies saying, okay, we have this publication record. And as I said, pathway to the funding, start local, build on your experience, look for interdisciplinary student thesis where you can engage students on the same topic from different institutions, publish that work in a peer-reviewed journals, partner with local organizations, keep looking on the various funding agencies website, like ICMR has extramural research, specific call for proposals for various conditions. But the condition is principal investigator or the team of investigators should have at least 3 to 5 research papers in that specific domain, because they also want to see like whether your interest is just opportunistic because the call for proposal has come up, or you have actually invested your time in that particular topic. And there are some 15 or 20 institutions under ICMR, including National Institute of Epidemiology, National Institute for Research in Reproductive Health, and so on. So some of these agencies also try to have collaborations. If you're looking for some digital interventions, even Department of Biotech or the Department of Science and Technology can help. And international agencies. Cracking grants with international agencies are difficult because your team should have experience in handling prior grants as well, because they also see like what is your strength in terms of scoring the research grants and executing the research grants, and what was your output in terms of conference presentations, publications, and so on. So I conclude my presentation here. These are the credits for the image and videos that I used in my presentation. This is review, and thank you all for your time and the patience.
I would like to thank Mr. Talati sir for sharing his valuable time and valuable knowledge about research and its relation to physiotherapy. Thank you very much, sir.
My pleasure, madam. Do we have any questions or anything?
We're waiting for questions, sir. I would like to thank Mr. Talati sir for sharing his valuable time and valuable knowledge about. So we don't have any questions.
Hello.
So
Hello, I'm sorry. I was on YouTube Live. Kandap sir, thank you so much for such an amazing lecture. You know, the way you talk was really necessity for physiotherapists to know much about this research and evidence-based. Like about research, if I like to ask like 1 or 2 questions, like mostly what we are facing a problem, like we want to do a study on cervical pain or neck pain or back pain. Most of the time, like when we relate with public health, now people are a little bit confused about what type of study they should go for, because the incidence and prevalences are not currently available. Recently also I'm facing a problem. There is a one doctor who want to do study on neck pain, but there are no currently localized, let's say in Vadodara or in central Gujarat, the prevalence of diseases are not available. So if student and faculty members focuses on that, that will be an advantage. But what they feel, why they don't focus on prevalence is ये बहुत छोटा स्टडी है, इसमें कुछ है नहीं है, क्या करेंगे, इसका क्या effectiveness आएगा, or when they go and show it to somebody, oh आपने तो क्या किया, just you have done a cross sectional study. So what will be your advice on this, sir?
So I don't know exactly how it works in physiotherapy, but as you pointed out, when I talk to the faculty members about such topics, many times like even in the community medicine, so which is very much like a public health in the medical faculty, and when we suggest such kind of research, they say like ours is a clinical discipline. So yours physiotherapy is also a kind of clinical discipline where you have a prescription or exercises or whatnot, like other therapies of physiotherapy. So they say like our like Medical Council of India does not allow this as a thesis because they does not have any interventions. So therapy also has such kind of challenges. How we can go about it in a setting, say particular to Parul University, is you can always list out such topics like we need an epidemiological study or prevalence and incidence studies for this. and report it to a CR4D, Center of Research for Development, and see if the CR4D can engage student from public health to take that as his thesis or dissertation, because they can do the prevalence and incidence studies pretty much. If your governing body like Medical Council of India, if physiotherapy's governing body allows such kind of study, we can definitely collaborate with a faculty from a public health or even nursing for that matter, because we have both postgraduate courses in nursing. So nursing is very much like a medical. So they have this orthopedics, maternal and child health, psychiatry, and different disciplines, even community nursing, pediatric nursing. So we can collaborate with these people, like in your case, say orthopedic nursing, and try to see whether they can take it up as or not, or both of you together can take it up or not. So there are the options, but the need has to be identified and come forward, because I said local evidence is not existing and no one is interested to do that. Yes. So, and sometimes we have the bottleneck. So I read a lot of report from industry which says AICTE, MCI, UGC are more like a bottlenecks than the facilitator of educational institutions. So their policies are such creeping that even if you are interested, you are bounded. Right. So best identified and report to us, and we can look forward if we can engage someone, or we can discuss with you whether your students can take up, because that are some of the possibilities in at least our setup where we have multiple institutions on the single campus.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much for your lecture, sir, and webinar. It was really interesting for all of us. Thank you so much. Please,
thank you,
madam.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your knowledge.